And we are following the developing situation in Minnesota tonight, where the Senate race between Norm Coleman and Al Franken is still undecided almost 3 months after Election Day. Now, for the second straight day, a three-judge panel considered whether or not that some 3,000 to 5,000 rejected absentee ballots would be counted, which could make the difference at the end of the day, as Al Franken clings to a tenuous 225-vote lead. And joining us now in a Hannity exclusive is Norm Coleman. Senator, thanks for being with us.
Sean, it's always a pleasure to be with such a great American. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate that. All right, let's start. You were in the courtroom from day one. Al Franken was not there. The issue has come down to these 3,000 to 5,000 absentee ballots. Tell us what the status of this is now.
Well, a very simple case we have, and that is the proposition, one, that all votes that are validly cast should be counted, and particularly when it comes to absentee ballots, not just those in Democrat areas. And that's what's happened so far. I was ahead election night, Sean. I was ahead when the recount started. The Franken folks want to stop now that he has a tenuous, we believe, artificial lead. But when all the votes are counted, all the absentee ballots counted in areas across the state, we believe that we will regain the lead. In addition to that, the simple proposition that no vote should be counted more than once. There are a number of votes that have been double counted, meaning there are more votes than voters in a number of precincts, and a number of them, by the way, in Democrat areas. So if we just make sure that every vote's counted once and every legally cast absentee ballot is counted, we're very confident that I'm going to come back out on top.
Well, Senator, as many as I understand it, 25 counties have literally more votes than they had people that actually said they were voting on Election Day. Is that correct?
Actually, I think it was about more than 25 precincts in predominantly Democrat areas. And, yeah, you have more votes than voters. In America, that's not supposed to happen. We believe that will be corrected. The biggest pool of votes that you touched on were the absentee ballots. There were about 953 that were counted from heavily Democrat areas. We have over 4,000 absentee ballots from across the state. And they were rejected, by the way, even though they fit in the same category from those that were accepted. That's classic Bush versus Gore. You can't have different standards in different counties. So today we had real voters come in and say, hey, my vote was rejected. A 75-year-old blind guy who his wife had him sign under her signature, not in his signature place. He said he voted he voted for Eisenhower at 52. He wants his vote counted. We're going to get his vote counted, Sean, and we'll win this race.
All right, but I want to go. I think this is very important to explain to the audience exactly what's happening here, because I contend that Al Franken wants to stop the counting, now that he's ahead. But this is very important, because the absentee ballots, they only went to the canvassing board, and their decisions were conflicting, and they literally only allowed the recount for districts that would, or precincts that would tend to favor Al Franken, but they didn't apply the same standards to districts where you did very well. Explain specifically what happened.
Well, here's what happened. We've got 12,000 absentee ballots that were rejected. The order was given to the counties, go back and take a look at those that were rejected, wrongfully rejected. And what you had is you had some counties, mostly in Democrat-dominated areas, that went back in and said, boy, we got a lot of those that were wrongfully rejected, and they're put in the mix. In many of other counties, particularly Republican-dominated counties, folks looked and said, hey, we did the right thing on election night. We're not going to put any back in the mix. But the bottom line, if you have ballots in Democrat counties that were put back in the mix, even though apparently the signature didn't match on the night of the election, or because there wasn't a registration form that one could see, but they later found it when they opened the ballot and found the registration form in there, you have to apply those same standards statewide, Sean. And what we did is we identified over 4,500 absentee ballots that have been rejected that have the same standards, the same conditions as those that have now gotten in to be counted. So if you then count all of them, I believe we'll come out ahead. Right now, the Franken folks want the counting stopped. They've got ballots in from the Democrat areas. They want the counting stopped. They're fighting real hard not to allow in votes of folks who came before the court today to say, hey, I'm legally registered. I'm alive. I voted. I want my vote counted.
Which is only fair. As your lawyer pointed out, it is very tedious. It is going to take a little bit of time, but you can't have two separate standards here. As it relates to the counting of the votes. Let me ask you on another point here, and that is Harry Reid has seemingly desperately wanted to seat Al Franken and do it quickly. But Minnesota law does not allow the certification to go through, and correct me if I'm wrong, until every court challenge is complete.
I've paraphrased Swain. In reports of my defeat or Franken's victory are greatly exaggerated. Minnesota law specifically holds off any final certification. The governor, the Secretary of State cannot sign a certification that anyone is the winner until we conclude the contested case. Harry Reid has talked about wanting to seat Franken provisionally. Harry Reid will not decide who the next senator from Minnesota is.
Yeah.
The voters of Minnesota will decide who the next senator is, and they're going to decide when their votes are all counted, and no vote is counted more than once.
Last question. There are a lot of people that have been writing us and wanting us to cover the story. They're following it closely. What could people do if they want to help you, Senator?
Sean, this recount is an expensive proposition. Al Franken's got George Soros. He's got MoveOn.org. I need just good Americans to contribute. ColemanForSenate.com, www.ColemanForSenate.com. It's an expensive proposition. Don't let George Soros, MoveOn.com, or the far left buy this race.
All right, Senator, we'll be watching closely. Thank you for being with us. And coming up, he orchestrated